respected chair, and my dear friends. It's a privilege and pleasure to be here and to talk to you about Dalit literature and the issue of internal imperialism in India. And I am thankful to the department and the teachers and all the friends who have given me this opportunity to address you on this serious, very political and pertinent issue in the present. The framework of the seminar itself is extremely significant and really political. You have framed this well, and I also appreciate and congratulate all those who have worked behind the conceptual design and the titling of this particular seminar, Displacement and Dispossession, Theory and Practice. And we were also fortunate to have Benjamin, one of the leading writers in Kerala today, who has also enlightened us on the issue of migration. He largely spoke of migration in the inaugural session. Displacement is having some additional dimensions also. Displacement is not simply a process of migration. There is an element of agency involved. There is something called force involved in displacement. In displacing and in this possession, some external agency should be at work. And that agency, of course, was colonialism, European colonialism, as we talk about it in the post-colonial and subaltern studies. So European colonialism, beginning from the days of Columbus, from Spanish conquistadors to the British rulers in the 19th and 20th century India, or the French colonial powers in various parts of the world, or the Dutch in India or in South Asia. So these were the major players in colonialism who engaged in a kind of deliberate displacement of the people. So Francophone and Anglophone colonialism after Columbus in the 17th and 18th, between these periods from 17th to 18th and 19th century until early 20th century, they continued that forced process of displacement and dispossession, which is called colonialism and transatlantic slave trade. So that is how it was forcefully done. It was not just in search of newer pastures. That is what migration is all about. When the resources are limited, you migrate to have better opportunities and better options and better possessions. That is what migration is all about. So there is an agency of the subject involved. But in case of displacement, it is forced displacement by an external agency. British colonialism, Francophone colonialism. Frantz Fanon was a subject of French colonialism. Ajay Sekher was a subject of Caribbean colonialism, enforced on them by the French imperial powers. So, in actual displacement and dispossession, there is an involvement of an external, powerful, authoritarian, hegemonic agency, and that often came from the European colonial powers. European capitalism, creating this colonial agenda, colonial expansionism coming out of the bourgeois development in Europe and conquering the world. So colonialism as a product of European bourgeois capitalism, and also racism emerging from colonialism through the bloody violence and persecution of the slaves. Slavery was invented. Transatlantic slave trade was initiated by the colonial forces. So through slavery, colonialism has unleashed that racism as well. And sexism is another aspect of this white supremacist, racist patriarchy. how they treat their women. Women are equal to niggers, as in the case of India. It is Shudra equal to women here. So whether it is Western European colonialism or in the case of the internal imperialism in India, the people, the common people are denied their human rights. They are just shares in history, their educational and other rights, and they are subjugated to the power of the colonizer. In the case of the world after Middle Ages, it is Europe. In the case of India, there is another form of that colonialism, or another lasting thing, or an earlier thing, a lasting empire. Colonialism, European colonialism has ended. It is the time of decolonization. But this internal imperialism is still continuing, and it is in power. It is the ruling elite in India, and it is still continuing to oppress the masses and exploit the masses, and it is denying human rights and educational rights and citizenship to the people in the periphery. The vast majority of people, the Dalit Bahujans and the minorities and women of India, they are outside the purview of this nationalist thing, the aggressive nationalism that we are having in the form of Vande Mataram nationalism, or the national anthem nationalism, that the aggressive nationalism which has become a kind of jingoism, and cultural nationalism in the present. It is otherizing and inferiorizing and excluding and marginalizing the vast majority of people in India itself. This is called internal imperialism. The presence and hegemony, a cultural hegemony. It's cultural, not just social and political and economical. It is a cultural hegemony. It has an imperial textuality. British colonialism operated through that colonial canon. The colonial canon, as Terry Eagleton or Gauri Vishwanathan or Sarah Suleri or Susi Taru have argued, they have created an imperial textuality, a textuality of Europe. A canon means a battery of texts, an unquestionable, established set of texts which were taught in the Indian universities. Terry Eagleton, for example, argues in literary theory and introduction that English was taught and introduced in India as an academic discipline even before it was introduced in the Oxford tradition. In England, at Oxford and Cambridge, they were teaching Greek and Latin in late 19th century and in late 18th and early 19th century. But in early 19th century itself, they have introduced English as a new discipline, as an academic discipline in Calcutta University and other centers of colonial educational establishments in India. So it was clearly done to monopolize the linguistic terrain, the cultural terrain, to create a supremacy, a cultural supremacism of Europe and Britain in particular. So this battery of texts, including Shakespeare to Milton and Chaucer and Wordsworth and the Romantic poets to Victorians, this was introduced as a kind of canon which cannot be questioned. So British imperialism or European imperialism operates with a kind of textuality. Exactly like that, internal imperialism also operates with an imperial textuality. British colonialism has its beginning only after after the wars with Tipu Sultan, the Carnatic wars, in late 18th century, and in early 19th century, or mid-19th century, they won the Bengal War. The Bengal Nawabs were defeated, and also the Plassey War. So it got established only after the 1800s, after the fall of Tipu Sultan, so to say, 1799. So it has a history of only 200 years. European powers, though they have established their colonies like Pondicherry or Mahi, the French, or the Dutch were having Tranquebar, and Danish people were also having some colonies. Pudunagaram and Yanam and all. But they got political control only after the fall of Tipu Sultan here. Only after defeating Hyder and Tipu, they got a kind of comprehensive political, social control of the land. So that means only after 1800s, the British imperial power was in full force in India. And they vacated the country, as you know, in 1940s. In 1947, we got independence and the Britishers left. So it was only for 150 years, or a maximum, if you count, for 200 years. So British colonialism or European powers were here only for 200 years, and now it is gone, it is dead and gone. But unfortunately, this internal imperialism, if you define the imperialism of Europe as external European aggression, European imperialism, you need to define this internal imperialism as something inherent to the country, something more lasting, something more deeply rooted. Basically, and all, they talk about colonialism as a lasting thing. The American imperialism as a lasting empire. But actually the lasting empire is the empire of Jati and Varna in India. The imperialism of caste, which is called Hindu colonialism, the term originally developed by that Swami John Dharmatirtha, a disciple of Nanaguru. He has written that book called The Menace of Hindu Imperialism, Haindava Dushprabhutvatinte Charistram. In 1942, he wrote that in English. Swami John Dharmatirtha, original name in Purvashrama was Chattanatta Parameshwara Menon. He became a disciple of Nanaguru and he became a monk, and he traveled throughout India and he observed the history, the social history, and he studied it, analyzed it, and with his critical consciousness he arrived at a conceptual framework called Hindu imperialism. This lasting internal imperialism in India is nothing but Hindu colonialism or Hindu imperialism. That is what the internal imperialism is all about. It is the lasting empire of Varna and caste, Varnashrama dharma. That is the inherent internal imperialism in India. British colonialism is no more. It was only for 150 or maximum 200 years. It's gone. That's why even post-colonial pundits like Gayatri Spivak, they talk about the British colonialism or European colonialism as an enabling wound, as a medicine as well as poison. In an essay called The Burden of English, she talks about English, the language of the colonizers, European powers, as a medicine because it's a panacea as well as a poison. It has got all the colonial hangovers, therefore it is a poison. At the same time it is enabling, therefore it is a medicine also for the people, the Dalit Bahujans and women. It is a liberation because human rights and education, letters, right to letters, read and write was prohibited to the people and women especially, to Shudra, Chandala and women. The right to letters, it was prohibited here by that code of conduct here, the law, the Hindu law. Bahujan translated it as the laws of Manu. It is called the Manusmriti. Manusmriti, the iconic text of Varnashrama dharma. The Hindu law, it prohibited learning of women and the Shudra and the Chandala, the outcasts or the Panchamas, the Avarna as they are called, because they are outside the Varnashrama dharma system. The vast majority of people in India, they are the Avarnas, the Dalit Bahujans, and also the Adivasis and the tribes. So this is the lasting empire. It began from the destruction of the Indus Valley civilization, which was a Dravidian civilization, around BC 1500. The devastation of Indus Valley happened somewhere around BC 16th or 14th century, in between that period. And from there you have, in North India, you have a Vedic age, where the Vedic Sanskrit got prominence through Aryan invasion. And the Vedas and the Upanishads and the Vedantas, all its metaphysics, and the Smriti Shruti, Puranas of Hinduism emerging after the Vedic age. So this flourished in early Middle Ages, the Purana tradition and the Smriti, and this Smriti called as Manusmriti, the Smriti of Manu, the lawmaker of the Hindu world, the Aryan, Brahmanical, Vedic age. That was in currency here till recent times, till a couple of decades ago, till 1947, Manusmriti was in force here. And Manusmriti was banishing the outcasts and the rights of women, and they were denied education. So this was the dehumanizing done by Manusmriti, or the Hindu law, the Brahmanical Hindu law in India. So this is the lasting empire. British colonialism was here for a brief time, 200 years, and it provided English education even to the untouchables and women. That is how we have women writers like Torudas emerging, Sarojini emerging, plenty of women writers in late 19th and early 20th century. Plenty of Dalit Bahujans emerging. Ramji Sakpal, the father of the architect of Indian Constitution, Baba Saheb Ambedkar, he got education, English education. Mahatma Phule got, the father of the so-called father of the originator of Indian social revolution, Mahatma Jyotiba Phule of Maharashtra, the pioneer who initiated Satyashodak Samaj in 1820s, as early as 1820s and 30s. Mahatma Phule, who made his own wife a teacher, who is supposed to be the first woman teacher in modern times, Savitribai Phule. There is a university in Pune. Pune University is now named after Kranti Jyoti Savitribai Phule University. So, Mahatma Phule, who educated that Savitribai, Mahatma Phule, who pioneered the social revolution by including Dalit Bahujans into his sect called Satyashodak Samaj, he got also English education from the Scottish missionaries, the European missionaries, the Christian missionaries. So, though the European intervention was detrimental or harmful in many ways, it provided education and human status to women and the untouchables in India. So that is why even Gayatri Spivak acknowledges that it was enabling. It is a medicine, of course. It has got all the colonial problems, the poisonous elements are there, but we need to acknowledge that emancipating dimension of the Western intervention that created the break here. That is how Ayya Vaikundar in South Nanjinad emerged as a defiant kind of sage against the caste system. That is how Taikadaya emerged as a major practitioner of Siddha medicine and philosophy in Travancore. That is how Narayana Guru also enabled. Narayana Guru, for example, has clearly given this statement that it is the British. Through his life and teachings, he has given it clearly that he has spoken or uttered these words unambiguously that it is the British who gave us this sagehood. It is not given by any Hindu varnashramis. Namukku sannyasam thannu nammude gurukkanmaranu അവർ. That is how Narayana Guru has acknowledged the ethics of the European intervention in India and Canada. So, this kind of Avarna uprising, the Renaissance in Kerala, Ayya Vaikundar, Taikadaya, Narayana Guru, all the Ayyangali, Poigai Appachan, all these forces from the untouchable world re-emerged, and they created their renaissance because of this intervention, because of this ethical dimension of the European Enlightenment and the Western missionary endeavors, missionary educational and healthcare efforts in South Kerala, the LMS missionaries, the CMS missionaries, Basel mission in parts of Gundak Sahib and all, Basel mission in Malabar. So this kind of a difference is there. British colonialism was here for only a brief time, but unfortunately the lasting empire is that of caste and varna, which is still dividing the society, which is still dividing the nation. The nationalists are boasting about their nation, But what kind of a nation they have? It is a fragmented nation. It's a split nation. There is no nationalism in India. Hinduism is a divide and rule policy. It's an imperialism itself. So the Hindu nationalism cannot claim about a kind of true nationalism. If at all there was a nationalism in India, it was in the Mauryan age. The Buddhist nationalism was there. But it was not a narrow nationalism. It was a true internationalism. Because Ashoka and the Mauryas, they were propagating the philosophy or gospel of Buddha into various parts of the world. It was an international kind of thing. It was a universalism, so to say, or at least an Asian, Pan-Asian kind of a culture. It was not a narrow nationalism. Or during the days of Akbar and the Mughals, we have a kind of liberal nationalism. Political unification and a kind of liberal nationalism during the days of the Mughal kings. But what kind of a nationalism do we see in Hindu nationalism? When the Britishers and the European powers were emerging in the 17th and 18th century, what were they doing? What was the RSS doing when Britishers were ruling India? They started only in the 1920s, and they never took a clear stance against the British rule. You know that they wrote, their leaders and godmen, they wrote apologies, many apologies to the Britishers, Savarkar and Golwalkar and other gurus. So that kind of nationalism they have shown when the Britishers or the European imperial power was here, and now they are creating their version of Vande Mataram nationalism and the national anthem nationalism. It's nothing but cultural nationalism. They are fabricating a false notion of Hindu past. Even prime ministers are boasting about plastic surgery and aeronautical engineering existing in Vedic age in a bogus way. It has nothing to do with history. So Hindutva creates a hagiography of its own. It fabricates its own past. It takes everything from the Jains and Buddhists and Muslims or Jews and label it as its own. So this kind of a hegemonic, all-encompassing, totalitarian or fascist, so to say. Fascism is a proper word to refer to this kind of totalitarianism. So this kind of a crisis is here because the people are falling prey to the agendas of Hinduization, which is the chief force of internal imperialism in India. Through Hinduizing the untouchables, who are the victims of Manusmriti, who were denied education and human rights for thousands of years. From BC 1500, the devastation of Indus Valley onwards, these people are denied justice and education and human rights, and now they are being co-opted by demonizing the so-called other, by demonizing the minorities in particular, by demonizing the Christians or the Muslims or the Sikhs or the Parsi or the Jews or the Jains or the Buddhists. They are creating a kind of pseudo-majoritarianism. They are creating a kind of false nationalism, a very narrow parochial nationalism which is cultural nationalism. Another word, cultural nationalism, is a synonym of fascism. You know about the history of the gas chambers and Auschwitz, Hungary and Germany, Italy and all, Mussolini to Hitler, you know. So they were boasting about their nationalism. They were boasting about their language. They were boasting about their race, Aryan supremacism. Same thing that is done by Golwalkar and Savarkar and all in their text, Hindu Rashtra, for example. So, this kind of a totalitarian nationalism, aggressive nationalism is nothing but cultural nationalism. Even the recent demonetization is a demonization. This kind of othering and what you call animalizing and demonizing the other. It is specifically targeted against the so-called imagined other, or the other presence in India, or the minorities in India in particular. That is how it is legitimized. Almost 100 people lost their lives in the ATM queues and other problems, and now they are being given 2 lakh each. So that is the price that the Hindu Nationalist Party and its government is offering to human life. Human life is priced at 2 lakh. So this is the dehumanizing condition in India, where we need to ponder on the issue of internal imperialism or Hindu colonialism, and through this pseudo-majoritarianism, they need the number, as in the Pune hunger strike of Gandhi. They don't want the untouchables to leave the so-called Hindu fold, because they fear about Hindus or caste Hindus. Hindus are actually caste Hindus. That is a system, the Varnashrama Dharma system, which is enshrined in the Vedas. It is Vedic. That is what you need to understand. It is given religious sanction in India. The dominant religion, that is Hinduism, Brahmanic Hinduism, provides religious sanctions to this cleavage in society. The hierarchy in society is given legitimacy by religion in India. It is in the Rig Veda, in a mandala called Purusha Sukta. It is in the Purusha Sukta of the Rig Veda that they talk about the creation story, and they imagined the God as a Brahma Purusha or Virat Purusha, and from the mouth emerged the Brahmans, therefore they are the head priests. From the hands emerge the Kshatriya, therefore they are the rulers or the kings or the militant kings, those who can wield the weapons and all. And from the thighs emerge the Vaishyas, therefore they have to do the trades and commerce. And from the feet, from the lowest part of that Purusha, from that male figure emerge the Shudra. Therefore, they are the subservient slaves, lifelong subservient slaves of these Trivarnikas. This is called Chaturvarnyam. Chaturvarnyam maya sushtam guna karma vibhagaja says the Gita. The Gita also legitimizes. The Gita, the sacred text of the Hindus, also legitimizes this social hierarchy and division, which was so dear to Gandhi, not just to Gandhi, but also to Godse. Godse was also a fan of Gita. Also Tilak and Patel, all the nationalist elites, they fondled and cherished the Gita. And Gita legitimizes Chaturvarnyam. And also it gives warning against Varna Sangara. Varna Sangara means inter-caste marriage. Nanaguru has given that message when Sahodaran, in 1917, when Sahodaran did that inter-dining at Cherai, the historic first inter-dining in Cherai, and he was beaten up by all these Chandala folks and the Shudras. And when he approached Nanaguru in the Alua retreat, he said, you need to have patience. You should have patience like the Christ. Like Christ, you need to have clemency towards these brutal forces. And he also gave a message which is called the Great Message, Mahasandesha, in which he clearly says that there is no problem in intermarriage or interdining because human beings are all one. So he also wrote Jati Nirnayam and Jati Lakshanam, through which he has very scientifically and very rationally questions the logic of caste and what. And he also condemned this Rig Veda story, Rig Veda Purusha Sukta story, that human beings are emerging from the mouth and body organs of a male Virat Purusha. We know that without woman you cannot have offspring. So Purusha Sukta and Rig Veda, the people who wrote, the rishis who wrote these Rig Vedas and Suktas, they never wanted to acknowledge the contribution, the equal contribution of women. That is why women are not mentioned. That is why Avarnas are not mentioned. Only these fourfold Varnas are mentioned, that through emerging through the various body organs of the Virat Purusha. So this kind of a queer story is there at the heart of the Hindu Vedic tradition, which legitimizes this Chaturvarnya. Chaturvarnya eventually gave birth to the caste system. At the time of the Buddha, by BC 6th century, it has deteriorated into this kind of an evil caste system. Untouchability was in practice. Manusmriti was in full swing. And only through the activities of the Buddha questioned this caste and Brahmanism. Gay Owen herself has written that book, Buddhism in India, Challenging Caste and Brahmanism. In that book also she has elaborated on how the caste system has degraded, dehumanized millions and millions of people in India and women in India in particular. So this is the trajectory, the genealogies of internal imperialism. This is called internal imperialism. Caste rule, caste regime, caste Hindu system, Hindu colonialism. This is called internal imperialism. And the victims, of course, are women of all castes and varnas and the avarnas, the Dalit Bahujans. And the Shudras are also included. Because Mahatma Phule himself was a great Shudra intellectual of Western India, Maharashtra. And despite having his great social and economic status as a, what you call Phule, as a Pushpaka person, it's a Phule, it comes from that word Phul or the flower, either florists and gardeners, Pushpaka related to that Pushpaka community. Even despite having his high social and economic status, he was denied education in the so-called Gurukula system. The Gurukula system, which is now presented as a great model by our new educational policy 2016, unleashed by Smriti Irani, often called Manusmriti Irani and Javadekar now. So in that National Educational Policy 2016, they talked about this Gurukula system, which was denied to 99% of people in India and all women of India. Even if you are born in Brahman community, the woman will be treated as a Shudra. Woman is equal to the nigger, as in European capitalist, racist, sexist colonialism. Women are equal to niggers, blackies, black people, slaves. Exactly like that. In the rule of Manusmriti and Gita and this Veda and all, women are equal to Shudra. All women. So this is the system. This is the system of internal imperialism in India, which we need to critically realize and resist. So wherever there is this hierarchy, Rohit Vevula is a recent victim. Millions of victims from ancient times onwards. It has chopped to death millions and millions of women and untouchables and minority people who operated against or who challenged this caste system, this casteist, sexist patriarchy. Because Brahmanic patriarchy is a double-edged sword. It is a double hierarchy. Benjamin was talking about Erecta wheel. This is a double exile, so to say. Not double home, but a double exile. It's a hierarchy of caste and also a hierarchy of gender. That is what Brahmanic patriarchy is all about. Indian feminists like Kumar Chakraborty, like Dalit Bahujan feminists like Sharmila Rage, who was at that Pune Savitribai Phule University, was a sociology professor. She passed away recently, a couple of years ago. She has in her recent book, her last work, which is titled Against the Madness of Manu. Professor Sharmila Rage, last work, one of the leading Dalit Bahujan feminists in India. She has published that book, published by Navayana. It is called Against the Madness of Manu. Baba Saheb on Brahmanic patriarchy. That is the second title. So this kind of aggression, this kind of violence, this kind of dehumanizing, it's a double-edged weapon and a double hierarchy Brahmanism is all about. So So it has created its outcasts. Through centuries, it has established here in India as a social system, as culture, as a traditional culture. It's all legitimized in terms of culture and religion. And the Vedas, Purusha Sukta, Manusmriti, Gita, the Shruti, Smriti, Puranas of Hinduism, that legitimizes it. And the epics and Puranas are also nothing but tales of invasion and conquering. That is what you find in the Ramayanas or the Mahabharatas. The Aryan heroes coming from North India, from Ayodhya, and conquering South Indian people and lands, and up to Sri Lanka they are capturing it. That is what you find in the dashing hero of Ram, who humiliated Shurpanakha. That is why there was that war between the Sri Lankans and the so-called Aryan boys. And he also killed and sniped through cheat. He killed that great warrior called Bali. And he also abandoned his own woman, Sita, when she was full pregnant with those twins. She was abandoned to protect the Varnashrama Dharma. And he also single-handedly killed that man called Shambhuga. Shambhuga was only a Shudra, that's why. He was a great sage. He learned the art of letters, and he was teaching Shudra and Chandala kids and women also, girls also. That was the crime that he has committed. He violated Manusmriti, which says, Shudra Akshara Samyuktam Duraye Paripadjyate. That is what Manusmriti is talking about. If a Shudra learns letters, he should be chased away as a rabid dog. It's compared to a rabid dog. That is a metaphor used by Manu. And about women, you know, Natri Swavandri Marhati, which means no woman deserves freedom. She should be denied freedom. She should be kept under constant vigilance, surveillance. She should not be allowed a room of her own, as Virginia Woolf argues. Or Phyllis Wheatley, the slave girl, was longing for. In Alice Walker's In Search of Mother's Garden, you know about that slave girl who wrote poetry, that is Phyllis Wheatley. So, with our action, you know, we don't have much time. It's already 1 o'clock, so that is why I couldn't enter into the subtleties and the literary, the so-called epic Purana, Shruti Purana things. So anyway, education, freedom, basic human dignity status was denied to women and the untouchables or avarnas in India. This is the Hindu colonial system. This is called internal imperialism, which you will find originating in the work of Swami John Dharmatirtha, and later recent critiques like J. Raghu, for example. I also use that term Hindu colonialism or internal imperialism. J. Raghu has extended it from Swami John Dharmatirtha, and it is a key term in analyzing the kind of hegemonic culture we have in India. And Dalit literature is a response and resistance to this internal imperialism in India. Dalit literature has been there for a long time. In modern times, it was reinvented and re-inaugurated by Baba Saheb Ambedkar himself. The 22 volumes that he has written and published in English actually form the rock bed of Dalit literature. It is the theory. It is the theoretical foundation of Dalit literature, the narratives of dispossession and dislocation. In India, this forceful dislocation, forced displacement and forced violent dispossession was done by the Varnashrama Dharma project, by the Aryan invasion in South India, which demonized and animalized the South Indians as apes and gorillas and monkeys, vanaras and kinnaras, and rakshasas. South Indians and Sri Lankans as rakshasas because they were Buddhists. That is why they were demonized as rakshasas. Hindu colonialism cannot conquer. Even during the 10th and 11th centuries, the Chola Hindu power, Shaivite power of the Cholas, Raja and Rajendra couldn't conquer Sri Lanka. It has been a Buddhist country from Buddha's own times onwards, at least from Ashokan times onwards. From BC 3rd century, it was proselytized by Ashoka's own daughter Sanghamitra, who took that Bodhi Vriksha from Gaya to Anuradhapura and planted it and civilized and proselytized that country. So from Sanghamita's time, from Mahinda's time, from Ashoka's times, it has remained as a Buddhist land. So that is why Hindu colonialism couldn't conquer it in actual terms. Therefore, in narrative, as Edward Said would say, narratives are at the heart of empire. In culture and imperialism, Edward Said argues that it is through narratives that you conquer your enemies. It is through narratives that you legitimize your power. The imperial textuality, I talked about the colonial canon and all. Through the Smriti Puranas, through the Puranas, they have legitimized and created a kind of bogus thing without reference to history. They demonized the South Indians and Sri Lankans because they were Buddhists. So this kind of aggression was there from ancient times onwards, from the devastation of Indus Valley onwards. Hindu colonialism has been exercising this brutal, dehumanizing power over the vast majority of Dalit, Bahujan and women in India. And Dalit literature is a response. Dalit feminism, Dalit Bahujan literature and Dalit Bahujan feminism, these are responses, defiant responses and resistance to this lasting empire of caste. And we don't know about the ancient times. Recent critics like Sachidanandan, for example, he argues that the origins of Dalit writing and women's writing in particular, it is again argued by Susi Tharu and Kenalida in that 2 volumes, Women Writing in India, OUP editions. They also argue that same thing. Women writing and Dalit writing has emerged in the Sangham age in South India. In the Buddhist literature of South India and in the Pali literature, which was Prakrit of Pali language literature, which was the language of Buddha's gospel, the language in which Buddha preached, and the nuns and monks educated the people in South India. That is why, as Benjamin said, we have Pali words in the current Kerala Bhasha. Tamil and Pali are the foundations of the current Kerala Bhasha. This kind of a modern Malayalam is a product of Sanskritization post the 16th century. Only after Ilkachan's Adhyatma Ramayana, when Rama was enshrined or established here as a lord, this Rama who killed the Bali, who killed Sambuddha, who killed all the South Indians and Sri Lankans and who abandoned his own wife, he was established here as a Maryada Purushottam, as an ideal god through this Chirama Kavi's 14th century Ramakatha Patta, which is written in Malayalam Tamil or Malayalam Tamil. Even in the 14th century, the literary language was Malayalam Tamil or Malayalam Tamil. And only in the 16th century, when Edutachan was forced, somehow pressurized, Edutachan was an assan of Eduthu. Eduthu comes from the mnemonic tradition of Jain and Buddhist legacy. So, somehow he was co-opted or forced or pressurized to write about Rama. And he used all the Kirtana, generical techniques of Mahayana Buddhist Kirtana Sahitya to write about Rama. Even the Panchavarna Kili and the Kilipwata tradition, all these have what we call the pre-Hindu lineage or Buddhist, specifically Buddhist Eluthu connections in Kerala or South India. So somehow they managed to establish Rama through Edutachan's Adhyatma Ramayana, and only after that you have this kind of caste slavery in Kerala. Till the early Middle Ages, till the 8th and 9th century, the Muvendas, the Chera Chola Pandyas were resisting the ideology of Varnashrama Dharma because they were mostly secular and they were polyphonic, like Nanaguru. They were open to all religions. They considered religions as equal, and even rationalism was promoted. So most of the early Chera kings till the 8th century, they They were open to various sources of religion. That is why we have Pallibana, Cheraman Perumal from Kodungalur going to Arabia and meeting the Prophet himself. He went from here when Brahmanism was making inroads to Kerala. He fled this country like Bodhidharma, who went to China and introduced that Shaolin Kung Fu there, the colony from here in China. Pallibana the first in 7th century. He went from Kodungalur and met the Prophet in person and converted to Islam, and while returning, unfortunately he died, he passed away near the coast of Oman, and his shrine, his Maqbara is still there in Oman, Pallibana's Maqbara. So the early Chera prince, the Cheramans, they were open to all sorts of religions, and Pallibana II, he continued as a Buddhist till the 16th century, and he was somehow killed or he was somehow deposed. So only after the 16th century, this ideology of internal imperialism got prominence in Kerala, or upper hand or absolute hegemony was achieved after the codification of Adhyatma Ramayana by Elutachan. And as Benjamin argued, this language is having only 500 or at least 400 years history. This Hindu colonialism is also having that absolute hegemony for the last 500 years in Kerala. So it can be defeated, it can be resisted in Kerala and in South India if you realize your true lineage, your true heritage of Buddhism or Jainism or Islam or Christianity or Jewism or the polyphony of all these things. Your humanity, if you realize your humanity, this can be defeated. So that is what Dalit literature is also talking about. It has its origin in the Teri Gatha, the songs written by the elder nuns. Teri means the nuns, the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis. Bhikkhu, bhikkhuni is the nun. The Buddhist nun is called a bhikkhuni. So they are called the Teris. The early Theravada nuns are called Teri. They have composed their songs. That is called Teri Gatha, which is there in the Tipitaka, the canon of Buddhism. So that is the origin of Dalit and women writing, according to Susi Saru and Sachidanandan and K. Lalita and all. So if you look at the Sangham age, the word itself comes from the Triratnas of Tricharanas of Buddha, elaborated by the Buddha, Sangham, Dharmam and Buddha. So the Sangham age provides an array of writing done by the basic communities in South India. There is no mention of Jati or Varna in the ancient Tamil classical text. A.K. Ramanujan himself has translated these words. Poems of love and war, the Agam and Puram Kavitagal. Poems of love and war, interior landscape, these are the words by A.K. Ramanujan, where you can read it in English language. So there is no mention of Jati and Varna in the ancient classical Tamil text, which has a history of 2,500 years, which is a true classical language in India, not Sanskrit. Sanskrit emerged only in the early Middle Ages, only after 8th century, only after 7th and 8th century, this Devanagari, the script of Sanskrit emerged, and Sanskrit emerged as an elite, hegemonic language, as a language of Hindu imperialism or internal imperialism. If English is the language of Western European British imperialism, Sanskrit of course is the language of the internal imperialism. So this was obliterating and erasing the Prakrit diversities in India, the Pali, Arthamagati, Kadibodhi, in which Kabir, the Sufi poet, wrote. So all these things were diminished and erased, and a totalitarian, again this totalitarian all-encompassing meta-narrative of Ramayana and Mahabharata and Bhagavata and Gita and the Vedas, all these were established through the discourse of Sanskrit, which is the language which is never spoken by the people. That is another important point that you need to mark. Sanskrit is not spoken by any community or any people at any moment in history. It has no place. Every language has got a geography, a cultural geography, and a concrete coordinates-oriented geography, a geographical space. But Sanskrit doesn't belong to any geography. Because it is the artificial, so-called cultured, sophisticated, refined language created by the priestly patriarchy in India or Brahmanic patriarchy in India. And it is the language through the Sanskritization and Hinduization of the Dalit Bahujans and women in particular happens in India. So the linguistic and cultural foundations are also bogus, like the history of Hindutva, the fabricated history of Hindutva, where plastic surgeries and aeroplanes were having these greater claims. So Dalit literature is therefore a literature of humanism. It is a literature of rationalism which questions the meta-narratives of Sanskrit and Hindutva in India, which is also a literature of compassion, as Buddha or the Jesus Christ has taught. That is why Mahatma Phule, he imagined this community or future India as a Baliraj in the 19th century. He imagined India as how long can we? Okay. So that is why Phule, who imagined future India as a Baliraj, the kingdom of Mahabali, the kingdom of the great demonized other, he was rendered into an Asura or Rakshasa because he was a just ruler. He was an ethical ruler, he was a compassionate ruler, he was going by his word, he stood with his word. That is why Brahmanism couldn't stand that kind of ethics, so they demonized him. Mahabali was demonized as an Asura, the politics of demonization. And Ravana was also demonized because he was a Buddhist leader from South India resisting the Ram Janma Bhumi project. Mahishasura in Mysore, he was also such a compassionate, just ruler or leader of the subaltern people. Therefore, he was animalized and demonized. He was first rendered into an animal, Mahisha, a buffalo man, as the Brahmanic media is terming some of the leaders like Lalu earlier, they termed him and compared him to buffalo. So likewise, Mahishasura was compared to a buffalo. He was animalized and then they demonized him. He is a buffalo demon, and then they actually came up with that Devi who lured that Mahishasura, and she slain him in sleep. Like Arattapuda Velayappanikar, who fought caste in mid-19th century, who was assassinated when he was in sleep. Exactly like that, Mahishasura was lured by this white woman and slain in sleep. So this is how all the demonized others are being brutally exterminated through cheat, through cunning. You know the treatment given to Mahabali. He was pushed to the netherworld by that dwarf called Vamana. Vamanadasam Vedinidevam Mahabali Vacha Varizidevam. That is what Sahodaran has written, reminded us in his Onapatta in the 1930s. So this kind of cheat, this kind of inhuman othering, this kind of demonization, like demonetization, it's a demonization, that is there in the Varnashrama Dharma project. So Dalit literature also resists this demonization. That is why they celebrate Mahishasura Jayanti. That is why there are problems in the universities. In JNU the crisis is worsening now. You know about Rohit Vemula's sacrifice. Plenty of such heroes were there. So at least from 16th century you have that legacy in Pakana of the Dalit resistance in Pakana, Paraibetta Pandaripulam and all. So Pakanar was such a resisting voice. Sahodaran Sonappat, actually it is drawn from some of the lines of Pakanar. Navili Nadu Vanidam Galam Manushan Ellari Unnu Bole. So that Samabhavana, that egalitarianism, the liberty, equality and fraternity that Ambedkar talks about, he derives it not just from the French Revolution and the European tradition. He says in a last BBC talk, he explained that it is not just from the French or European enlightenment that I take this modern values of democracy, liberty, equality, fraternity. It is also from my master, the Buddha, from his democratic sanghas, I derive these principles. So, Ambedkar's writing, Ambedkar's philosophy, that is the background, that is the foundation, the base of Dalit literature. So, Dalit literature is nothing but an annexure to Ambedkarism. It is an expression, it's a cultural, epistemological enhancement and extension of Ambedkarism itself. Ambedkar's philosophy of social inclusion, Ambedkar's philosophy of representation, Ambedkar's philosophy of social democracy, social representative democracy. His notion of Navayana as a Nava Buddha of India, as a Neo Buddha of India, Baba Saheb has envisioned a kind of political Buddhism, which is not the old Theravada or Mahayana or Vajrayana, but a specific mode of cultural activism itself, which can challenge caste and Brahmanical Hindu hegemony in India. So that is the significance of Ambedkar. And Dalit literature is nothing but an expression, a cultural articulation and repercussion of Ambedkarism. So that is why in Maharashtra, after Ambedkar, who passed away unfortunately in 1956, 2 months after his conversion at Nagpur in 1956 in the Diksha Bhumi, along with 5 lakh untouchables, he embraced Buddhism and left the Indian Imperialism, the caste Hinduism of India. So that is the greater model that Dalit literature takes as a cultural articulation, as a cultural defiance to the dictations of the Hindu hegemonic nation. That is the apt reply, conversion against this aggressive narrow nationalism, conversion against cultural nationalism. That is the model that Baba Saheb has given. So, Dalit literature is also a political project. It challenges that cultural nationalism. In that sense, Dalit literary discourse or writing is a counter-narrative to cultural nationalism or fascism proper, especially Hindutva fascism of India. So, soon after Ambedkar, you have autobiographies developing in various parts of Maharashtra. Babu Rao Bagul's autobiographic fiction emerging in the 70s. Lakshman Mane and Lakshman Gaikwad writing Ubara and Uchalliya, again autobiographical kind of fiction. Then the Dalit poets emerge in Maharashtra, Marathi poets, Daya Pawar, Arjun Dangle, Raja Thale, Ayud Kamble, Namdev Bhassal. So these poets emerge and they have challenged the discourses of Hindutva, caste Hindutva. Brahmanic patriarchy was deconstructed, very critically deconstructed. And a new notion of compassionate ethics and aesthetics, and ethical aesthetics was in the making after Ambedkar in Maharashtra. And they also took very much from the Afro-American tradition, like the Black Panthers of Afro-American context, like the Black Panther Party and Black Power movement. They also created the Dalit Panther movement in Maharashtra. And they also had the manifesto of the Dalit poets and Panthers in India, the Dalit manifesto. And soon after it was in Hindi, Om Prakash Valmiki and his novels, Chotan and all. Then again Sharan Kumar Limbale's novels like Akarmashi, and also critical works like Towards an Aesthetics of Dalit Literature, which originally written by Limbale in Marathi and later translated into English. Our own Pradeepan Pampirikunnu has written a similar title called Dalit Saundarya Shastra. Pradeepan Pampirikunnu was a great movie who was also an editor of the Oxford anthology of Malayalam Dalit writing along with Professor M. Das and V. Pradeep and Chandrika and all. So Pradeepan's loss is a great loss. So 3 Dalit writers have written that same title. Sharan Kumar Limbale, Om Prakash Valmiki and our own Pradeepan Pambidikunu has written about Dalit Saundharya Shastra. It's a different aesthetics. It's an ethical aesthetic. It's not an aesthetics of himsa as you find in the Tandava or the violent, what you call the cosmic dance of Shiva, or in the Kaliya Mardana of Krishna. These are violent forms of aesthetic dance. But Dalit literature talks about an aesthetics of compassion and ethics. It's an ethical aesthetic. That is its difference. And also in South Indian languages, you have plenty of writers, plenty of Tamil writers, plenty of writers in Karnataka. Actually, the earliest voice in Dalit literature is traced to 11th and 12th century untouchable Kannada sage called Chennaiya, who was a cobbler and a writer and an orator. Madara, Chennaiya and Dasari, Kakkaiya of the 11th and 12th century. They are supposed to be the earliest voices in medieval Dalit literature. Then in 14th century you have Namdev, who was again a Shudra like Mahatma Phule. Namdev, though they wrote, unfortunately, the Shaiva Vaishnava frenzies of Brahmanism, two facades of Brahmanism, again recaptured that Dalit resistance. That is what you find in 14th and 15th century Maharashtra. You have Namdev, and following him, you have Chokkamela and his son Kammamela. These people wrote in the Vaishnavite tradition. Though they were articulating against caste, unfortunately, the Vaishnava Bhakti frenzy recaptured them, like Edukachan. Perhaps he was also carried away by the Vaishnavite Bhakti tradition. But as Ambedkar observes, all the democratic values that you will find in Bhakti movement, women's participation and untouchables coming into the field of writers, that came from Buddhism and Jainism and the Sufi tradition, not from the Brahmanical hardcore Hindutva. And all the reactionary elements like the Shaiva and the Hindu Bhakti, Shaiva Vaishnava Bhakti, worshipping the palace and things like that, the Padic cults came from the Brahmanical field. So you have Chennaiya and Kakkaiya who created that Vajana tradition in ancient, so to say, not ancient but early Middle Ages in the 11th and 12th century. And you have the Abhang tradition in Maharashtra, in Marathi, created by these untouchables, Chokkamela and Kammamela. And also partly drawn from Namdev, a Shudra Vaishnavite sage. And you have Pakanar in Kerala. And afterwards you have only Poigai Lappachan in Kerala. Poigai Lappachan, who has written about slavery that was existing till early 20th century. I am concluding in 2 minutes. So without a mention of Poigai Lappachan, how can you talk about Dalit literature in Kerala or Dalit literature in India or Dalit literature in the world? So Poigai Lappachan in late 19th century and early 20th century, he has talked about slavery, caste slavery, the hegemony of the ruling classes and castes in Kerala, the reality of caste oppression existing till early 20th century or early middle 20th century in Kerala. So Poigai Lappachan is supposed to be such a great liberator, is supposed to be such a great voice which you cannot compare to any ancient or middle age poets like Chokkamela or others. They are negligible if you arrive at Poigai Lappachan. So that is why his words, his patus or songs and spirituals, he spoke through songs and spirituals. He directly communicated to his people, Dalit people in Kerala, through the songs and spirituals. And he also created his own aesthetics and his own narratives to counter these narratives of dispossession and displacement. And after Poigai Lappachan, you have plenty of voices, you have great writers, you have poets like S. Joseph, for example, you have new poets like M.B. Manoj, for example. You have M.R. Renukumar, you have Kanesh is there, Binu Pallipad is there, Ajish Darshan is there. Women poets are now emerging from Dalit discourse in Kerala. Women poets, women theorists like Rekha Raj, for example, who has recently published that book called Dalit 3 Idapadalugal on Dalit Bahujan feminism in Kerala. Plenty of poets, Sati Angamai or Ammu Deepa or Dhanya MD. Plenty of Dalit women are also speaking and writing now. So Dalit literature has come of age. Dalit literature has emerged as one of the most vibrant, dynamic and creative field of writing and epistemology and resistance in India and Kerala. And through this kind of counter narratives, we can resist the politics of demonization and dispossession inflicted on us by this totalitarian Varnashrama Dharma project or Hindu imperialism or internal imperialism. So I hope that students and researchers, teachers and activists like you will take up this task in future, and we can effectively counter this project of internal imperialism, this most degraded caste slavery in India. Thank you very much.